right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll call the meeting of the full committee of Ways and Means to order. Welcome on this Tuesday. Our agenda today will consist of three propositions. One is House Bill 293, which we're waiting, hopefully momentarily, for copies to get here. So we'll suspend action on that one. And then House Bill 1251, which the subcommittee just heard, and House Bill 1221. So Chair will recognize Representative from the beautiful coastal area, Cecily Hill, to come and tell us about your House Bill 1251. Please, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will it was everyone that's here now, I believe, was here for the initial. So can we just omit that? Do I need to present?
You can do whatever you want to do.
If there's any clarification that anyone needs, and before taking a vote.
Well, would you yield us some questions then?
Sure.
It seems that number 13, who's that? Representative T.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wasn't here. Just a few minutes ago I was here, but at the initial meeting I wasn't there. So is that what you're talking about?
Just if you have questions or if you have concerns in regard to the bill.
Well,
It's a... Okay. Would you...
okay. Well, what I just heard a few minutes ago, I just thought maybe y'all would have had said something different about it in the actual meeting earlier. That you want the Senate to make this what it should be?
They will probably make some changes in it so that in order for the company that is sponsoring this development to accept. And in the essence of time, we're trying to get a vehicle going so that we have a bill to work off of to try to get this through. It would bring into an area that we just closed 100 businesses in the past year, and our unemployment rate has gone way up, and we're right now on the verge of possibly losing the Coast Guard in Camden County. This would be the project in Kansas City employs 8,000 people. The one in Nevada employs 6,000 people. It takes 2 years to build it, so it would create a tremendous job force for Camden County and for Georgia. And it would be a tourism center that would give back to the state, the economy for years to come, for the attraction of the tourists that it'll bring there.
Okay. How long will it be before Georgia will see some money? Since you can't... What are we talking about here?
Well,
Okay.
the company, the businesses that come in around this destination retail development are not exempt. So the taxes that they project will be immediate, but the ones from the seed group are the ones that are exempted.
Mm-hmm. And this vehicle don't do that?
And in the situation with Kansas City, the gentleman was telling me that they had hoped that the bonds would pay off in 12 years, and that they were at 5.5 years, and they were going to be paid off much earlier than the 12 years that they had anticipated. They had over $400 million in retail sales, 15 million people through the area, the development. And this was in the middle of a cornfield near Kansas City, with it being on the border, on the busiest expressway going to Florida, with people geared up for tourism and entertainment and the like. This should be a very successful project.
One more question. What's the name of the business in Kansas City, please?
It's the Legends. and it's the red group that are the developers.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Teague. Representative Peak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Hill, just want to thank you for bringing this bill. Just want to make sure to reiterate here that this, what we're expecting is anywhere from 6,000 to 7,000 to 8,000 new jobs to Camden County, as well as significant economic development through other businesses that may come up around there, like restaurants or convenience stores or homes being built. So there is an effect not just in the Camden County, but also from folks driving to this location, having to get gas, having to get, stay at hotels. So there's a significant economic impact from that.
Yes.
Is that not true?
That is true. And in the Kansas City area, $1 billion in supporting businesses in the area came in after this was built. They've built a huge soccer field that's near that, and several other things that have generated $1 billion in investment.
Yeah. Thank you, Representative. I appreciate you bringing this.
Representative Battle.
I just want to somewhat reiterate what was just mentioned. These are projects that are greater than $100 million. These are major projects that have a tremendous impact on us as far as the development itself. And then the other positive of that is that we are getting sales tax, even though there is a refund or a credit for that of 25%. 75% of that is coming to the state, which is a major has a major effect on our state and our communities that they're located in. And I think it's a great bill, a great opportunity to encourage even more developments in our state. And right now, how much sales tax is it generating as it is?
0.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a general question. This bill, is it not true, would apply as a general bill that applies to any project that fits within these guidelines that generates income tax for the state and generates, if it's large enough, and if it's approved under the guidelines of the Department of Economic Development, in this current form, would generate enormous amounts of revenue in the form of income tax, which is our biggest revenue source. As we give up 25% of the cost of the destination tourism project, excluding retail, hotels, restaurants, that kind of stuff, to fall within this bill. Isn't that true?
That is true, and thank you. The income tax that Georgia will receive is from the employees will be a tremendous amount of money that they're not getting now, too. So,
Chairman Knight.
Well, just to follow up on Representative Teague's question, the benefit would be immediate when they started employing people to start building this. So we would start to see immediate employment, immediate tax dollars, income tax dollars, and probably more sales tax dollars in that area. So I think that's a valuable consideration here. And just a follow up for Chairman Peak, I think he may be interested in putting a Cheddar's down there.
There you
go. But anyway, Mr.
Come on down.
Yeah, so,
Thank
Chairman,
you.
appropriate time, I'd like to be recognized for motion.
My recollection is this was a concept that was brought to us by the distinguished chairman of Economic Development Committee here in the Georgia House. We used to refer to this as a Kentucky model, but what we saw in that state were destination tourism projects that had to do mainly, in their case, with the horse industry, but they found out that typically they were getting 3 and 4 day overnight stays that they weren't getting before, all the economic benefits that came therewith, and it was it had turned out to be a fairly low cost to them in the sense of revenues because it was all new money, and I think that's the concept that's prevailing here. Obviously, the concern is that whenever government enters into competition with the private sector, we have to guard gratuities and that sort of thing. And I do know that the bill as drafted has been vetted through that process constitutionally and otherwise, at least 2 years that we know of in maybe it'll have a better success rate this year when it gets to the second floor. Who knows?
We'll try.
What's the will of the committee? I have a motion do pass by Chairman Peak, a second by Chairman Knight. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, like sign?
Nay.
One nay. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Hill. Very, very good job of presenting. We appreciate it. Okay, long awaited is our whip here.
He's on his way. He's on his way.
On his way, he doesn't generally get a bill presented. Okay. Chairman Parsons, would you take over the chair for me, please, sir, and maybe recognize me for House Bill 1221?
Is he turned on there? Which one says that one? All right. Chairman O'Neill, you're recognized to present House Bill. Which one? 1221.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, while we're waiting on Representative Lindsay, I bring before the committee House Bill 1221, which is what we call generally our streamlined legislation. And it comes to us, for those of you that weren't here earlier when it was in subcommittee, really from vetting through several of the interstate organizations that are all great resources for us to learn, like the NCSL and the ALEC folks and so forth. This has been studied and essentially crafted with the advice of a lot of those think tank kind of organizations. I will tell you that it's a completely volunteer situation as it concerns the retailers, or what we commonly refer to now over the internet as e-tailers, in that they voluntarily agree to collect Georgia state sales taxes and Georgia local sales taxes in exchange for immunity from later prosecution for the failure to collect those taxes if they are held by courts of law later on based on nexus to have been someone or some entity that was otherwise required to collect and remit those taxes. I think we'll be I think either the 27th or 28th state to adopt the volunteer program. I will tell you the fiscal note that I have seen. It's not in your file yet, but it will certainly be there hopefully before the end of the day. If not, we'll get copies to you individually. Estimates that the revenue generated by this new volunteer group of people that are already on board paying these and collecting and remitting these sales taxes is estimated for Georgia to be over $30 million. Obviously, 4/7 of that would be new state revenues, and 3/7 on average would be local revenues. It would appear to us to be almost windfall. But I also want to assure the committee that this is no new tax at all. It just is a new method to collect taxes that are current and have been on the books of Georgia since the 50s. We have a sales and use tax, and commodities that were otherwise taxable just because they're sold from out of state to in state does not change the taxability from the use tax standpoint if they're consumed and used in the state of Georgia. So this is our effort to sort of get on board with the volunteerism of it. This is not a mandated internet tax. It's been confused with that by some people, because the internet tax once, as I understand the history, was referred to as a streamlined tax on a national basis when it was proposed that it be enforced nationally. As the court cases gravitate to that, there is a strong likelihood that we will have interstate ability to in a cooperative manner to collect sales and use taxes that are due to this state, due to our budgets. But currently we do not have that, and as Chairman Parsons pointed out in the subcommittee, as a matter of fact, we've got just the opposite as it relates to the internet. We've got a preclusion from being able to do that by federal law at this time. So this streamlined volunteer tax really only has to do with this legal term called nexus and the possibility of judicial finding of nexus. So I'll be happy to yield now to any questions, but we wanted to make sure we've, especially Lindsay Napier, bless her heart, has worked so hard and so many hours on getting this to the point it's here, and our attorney Joe Schroyer. These folks are just incredible. They never see the daylight. I don't think they work all night and all day. But Miss Napier especially has gone to several of these conferences. She's talked to the experts on this. We're not creating the wheel here. We're getting on board with 26 or 27 other states, and we feel like that it could be a revenue resource for us for tax base that we already have on our books that couldn't come at a better time. Although it may very well take 6 months to a year to be able to completely implement this in the state, but it doesn't matter how long it takes to implement unless we get started as soon as we possibly can. And that's what I'm asking the favorable consideration of the committee to do, and I'll yield for any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Chair, you do have a question, number 27. I'm not sure who that is. Representative Scott, you recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think I have found my answer here on line 269. My question was going to revolve around if a tax, if the consumer had a billing address that was different from a shipping address, which zip code would be used, and I assume from the way I read this that the tax is collected and based on the zip code where the primary telephone number is. The place of primary use, so it would be.
We're a destination generally state as it relates to where the consumption or the use takes place. And I think we're really talking about the physical address, if that answers your question in that line there. Place of primary use means the street address. Now, how that relates to the zip code, I think the zip code of the street address as opposed to maybe if somebody had a P.O. box, is that the nature of your question somewhere else, or am I misunderstanding?
No, my billing zip code is different from my shipping zip code. In my personal case, I agree with everything this is doing and wish it was going further, but my billing zip code is different from my shipping zip code, and I was just wondering which zip code we were going to be using as far as which city the tax is collected.
The destination of the consumer rather than the vendor or biller is where the tax will be collected for and apportioned to. And that's part of the consistency of why the bill is so thick, is to get all of our local laws for sales tax and our state laws and definitions of terms to all be consistent with those that are all part of this streamlined project, which is an interstate project. I hope I answered your question. I didn't see. I'm not trying to avoid it. I just misunderstood it. I'm sorry if you want to rephrase it.
It's good enough.
All right.
Okay.
Representative Peake, is that you? Have your light on?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Help me just, I'm not quite sure I fully understand yet what the bill's doing. This is a vehicle to get us to the point that we will be able to collect sales tax on internet purchases in the future. Is that?
Well, not necessarily internet, out of state purchases. People that could get on a telephone and call somebody and say, "Send me a case of you know what."
Okay.
Bowling balls or golf balls or something, from another state. If you've got a vendor that would otherwise maybe be concerned that somebody could establish nexus with them in the state of Georgia, what they get in exchange for voluntarily collecting and remitting to Georgia, both statewide and local, is they get immunity from further prosecution if we're later found that they do have nexus and they're selling into the state of Georgia and essentially avoiding our tax code. Again, because of the destination under our use tax, which is often confused with the sales tax because we always say sales and use, but the two concepts are entirely different, as you well know as a CPA, and this gets us on board. This gives us a chance. These volunteers, this base of volunteers is growing leaps and bounds, and we expect that this number will exponentially rise over time,
So if I can, so say an Amazon.com, if you're purchasing something from them, they voluntarily.
Well, currently they don't, and that's one of the biggest interstate retailers that there are. And that's one of the ones that everybody seems to seek after. But a lot of these, some of the volunteers, Lindsay, you might can help me with some of the names, but a lot of these northeastern clothing companies, you know, that you buy the fancy boots from and the hunting clothes and all that sort of stuff, they participate. A lot of the western, mainly apparel kind of people that I've seen, but large entities that have regional headquarters way away from us that we don't think of. Maybe even European, like what is that big department store in London? We don't have. Harrods, yeah. See, Miss Penny knows. She can shop with anybody, but excuse me, Representative Houston knows. I'm sorry.
So these entities would voluntarily collect the sales tax, remit it back to the state, and in effect get immunity.
And they effectively get immunity. That's
what the
what
bill sets up the structure to do that.
And the structure is one of consistency. In other words, the way local sales taxes are assessed and collected in our localities has to be the same as in Mississippi or other states that are part of this. We've had to conform some of our definitions of what constitutes a fishing pole. Does it include the reel? Does it not? I mean, there's been just hours and hours of people sitting in a room trying to get all that consistent from different states. Those of you that go to NCSL and ALEC, and I know most everybody in this committee does, further their enlightenment after they even leave their work here, knows how much research and time is gone into this. Just gets us on the boat.
Okay.
And that's really what it does.
Okay, thanks.
Representative Abrams, you have a question?
Do you, and actually, if I could assist a bit.
Please.
There are two things. Chairman Scott, line 2289 is the actual answer to your question about the designation. Part of what the streamlined sales tax project requires is that you tax at the designation of the product. And so the language, and Lindsay can correct me, but I think it's section 48870, line 2289. That's the section that describes what has to happen in order for the sales tax to be implemented. And that goes for both catalog goods, basically any interstate sale. And the other part of this, which goes to Chairman Peake's question, is that one of the issues with, if you think about when you make a purchase, there's some sites you go to that ask you if you, for your sales tax, will apply sales tax and some that don't. Those tend to differentiate between the participants. But part of the purpose behind the sales tax, streamlined sales tax project, is that they're trying to hit a critical mass of states that participate in this so they can force Congress to actually resolve the nexus question, because there are about 3 outstanding lawsuits, the biggest one being in New York State, where Amazon has refused to acknowledge nexus, and they lost. They're still appealing. But if one of the ideas behind the project is that states have to basically band together to require that all of the other vendors actually participate so that they can get a critical mass and we can resolve the nexus issue for all retail vendors inside or outside the state.
Thank you.
That's what I meant.
Chairman Ron Stevens has a question, I believe. You recognized.
And I apologize, Mr. Chairman. I should have asked this in subcommittee. We've got, and I see our retail sales in the back there, but having to do with large ticket items like furniture, where a large portion of these companies have left the state for inventory tax or whatever reason. Is this mechanism going to allow us to capture the sales tax, for example, in North Carolina back to Georgia?
If it's a final destination, in other words, if it's truly a retail consumption sale. Now, there's still exemptions for wholesale. If they're coming into a furniture store, they still have their sales tax exemption number, that they can do. But the general answer to your question is yes.
Good.
If they so volunteer, to avoid the nexus argument later on. And I hope my newest co-signer with me over here will be able to explain that from the well better than I'm obviously able to do to you all.
Representative Black, did you have a question you recognized?
This is in line with that, but I have been told that the sales tax were reportable at the point of sale, and that the example with furniture was that if you go into the furniture store and buy furniture, the point of sale is at the furniture. But if you have that furniture delivered to your home in a different county, then the point of sale is in that county. And that's, I'm not the lawyer, but if that was accurate, then you go to North Carolina and you haul the furniture back to Georgia, then the point of sale is in North Carolina.
For sales tax purposes it is, but use tax is the destination of where it's going to be used. And they just happen to be the same rate. So, and typically that's exactly the transaction that Georgia would never otherwise be able to capture without this legislation. Is you can drive to North Carolina, pick it up, trailer it back here and avoid our tax entirely unless you voluntarily do it, even though it's due because you're going to use it in Georgia. This is not a new tax. I want to reemphasize that. These taxes are on our books and have been forever. Now, the inter-county situation, you know, it is, we've dealt with that in so many different ways, and mainly with companies that install and sell. And they have warehouses like an air conditioning contractor, or vendor, or whatever. Where is the tax due if they buy the air conditioning unit in say Lowndes County, but they install it what would be a county next door to you, Tift County? Then you get into some complications on where the final installation. You got one of the best local tax guys sitting right to your right there. He can answer all those questions. He deals with that all the time as a government lawyer or Representative Abrams. That's what they do a lot of. It is very complicated. This doesn't seek to change any of that. This just, again, Representative Black, my sole desire here is to get us in the game for these interstate transactions and add yet one more method to where we can collect what is legitimately due, not a new tax, what is legitimately due to the state of Georgia. And there are many vendors, catalog and otherwise, that are volunteering, to collect and remit these taxes. And I can't think of a more critical time in our history other than the Great Depression for us to take advantage of that if it's just going to, you know, be out there as low-hanging fruit. That's really the way I look at it. And we're not going to try to get this so complicated that it solves all those issues or problems that you're talking about, although those need work. The inter-county transactions and what constitutes delivery and where, point of sale and all that, those are very complex issues that this legislature probably needs to deal with erstwhile in the future.
Chair sees no further questions. We have for us LC 18. Let's make it 189166 ERS. Offers a substitute to House Bill 1221. What is the will of the committee? Have a motion. Do pass. We have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of passage of this legislation signify by saying aye. Any opposed saying no. Legislation passes with one negative vote. Go on to the Rules Committee. Thank you, Chairman.
He's here. I just don't have the words to adequately express how honored it is to recognize our distinguished whip. If you want to come forward, maybe do this sitting down. I know it's been the end of a long day for you, and you've had a lot of hard work and a lot of jumping around. If you want to bring any of your friends up with you, we kind of were guessing they were already there. We saw just you come up. I've got every microphone in the place on, so whichever one you choose.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The chair recognizes you to present to the committee the committee sub for House Bill 293.
Yes, yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 293. What we're trying to do, for those of you who were not on the subcommittee, is do two things. Number one, help provide greater ability to enforce our existing laws regarding what kind of activities are and are not legal in the state of Georgia regarding coin-operated machines, as well as set up an easier way to regulate the industry. This is one of these rare situations where the owners of the machines wish for greater clarity and regulation. The stores that these machines go into wish for greater clarity and regulation, so that operations that conduct their business legally are not at an unfair business disadvantage against those entities in our state who do not. We have worked very closely with the governor's office and with the Department of Revenue and with the GBI, and I believe as well as the individuals within the industry. And I believe as a result we have a pretty good bill here. And I would, however, let you know that we have been working on an amendment with the Department of Revenue and the GBI up through about 1 o'clock this afternoon. And so, therefore, there are a couple of little technicalities within the version that you have in front of you that I would like to have you guys to plug some additional language in that everyone agreed to. That simply did not make the version that Legislative Council, which worked very diligently to try to put in everything that we asked them to do so, if I may, as I walk through it, if you will allow me to do so. Section 1, if I sort of walk you through very quickly, Section 1 of the bill doesn't change any of the individual language, of the existing language regarding what kind of gambling devices are illegal, other than the fact that we are providing a definition for what a slot machine is. We have outlawed slot machines in Georgia in the past, but we never defined it. And as a result of that, there's been some ambiguity in the state of Georgia as to what kind of machines do and do not violate the law. And so we have added a definition found on lines 64 through 67 for what constitutes a slot machine. Underneath the heading of we missed something on line 61, where you see A is added. That should not have been added, Mr. Chairman. We apologize. If you could just sort of, in an amendment, take that back out. Item 2 basically wraps back around that if you are, in fact, holding on to a bona fide coin-operated amusement machine as defined by the code section 4817.1, you won't be in violation of our gambling laws. Section 3 of the bill, Mr. Chairman, deals with what happens when individuals operate illegally, and in terms of the seizure of these machines and the destruction of the machines. One thing that DOR and GBI asked us to take out, and we inadvertently failed to do so. Right now, the law requires, rather archaically, that the destruction take place in the actual presence of the district attorney and physical presence of the district attorney, which is oftentimes somewhat problematic. So we would ask that on line 96, beginning with the word "in," to strike on lines 96 and 97, in the presence of the district attorney of the circuit in which such county is located. If you would strike that out, that was something that everyone wanted to have struck out. It simply slows down the overall process. DAs, for some reason, don't want to simply hang around and watch a machine get destroyed. Section 4 provides some, once again, some added clarity as to what kind of activities are and are not illegal. And we added a definition for single play, and the importance of that comes in the bill, later in the bill, because we do already allow under Georgia law for you to be able to get in-store merchandise for a small amount for successful play. But what this does is provide a definition for what it does constitute a single play, and makes it very clear that that the merchandise that you can procure from the store that's allowing the machine to play in it sort of limits what kind of things can be redeemed for. For instance, it cannot be redeemed for tobacco, firearms, and that sort of thing. Once again, if you would, on page 6, DOR pointed out one thing. They want to make sure that that you can only get $5 for each single successful play. And so they, at line line 205, where it says received does not exceed $5 for each and every single play of the machine. They wanted to simply ask, Mr. Chairman, that you add the word successful there. That's sort of a belt and suspender sort of thing, but that's what our friends in DOR are paid to do, to put on belt and suspenders, and they do a very good job of, and we do appreciate their hard work. In addition to that, Mr. Chairman, on page 8 of this section, I think it's very important, we have stiffened the penalties for those who violate the law, making it very clear that this will be considered for the first time that you violate the law. It will be considered a high an aggravated misdemeanor. For folks who do so second or a subsequent time, it will be considered a felony. In regards to Section 5 of the bill, we do provide for certain exceptions out there for amusement and recreational establishments, and we define that term, and that's basically sort of the Six Flags Over Georgia situation. Section 6 goes into the just sort of defining what, once again, sort of defines what, both gives specific examples of what is and is not legal, and also sets forth general terms. In other words, if we miss something, we sort of generally say what kind of activities are illegal, but we also lay out what kinds of machines would be legal. Sort of try to go about it two different ways. Once again, however, we did in our work today, and what I want to emphasize, Legislative Council did a great job working with us this morning, and I do appreciate it. But there was one thing that DOR wanted in on page 11 at line 359. They wanted to have a new 15, which I guess Roman numeral 15 XV, and add the language on things that are illegal. Any video game machine or device for the play of poker, blackjack, and other card games, or any variation of the foregoing.
Whoa.
Yes.
Are you going to read that again? Is
Yes.
there going to be an amendment later?
Yes.
Okay. I'm
Yes.
sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. And it will be an amendment later. Basically, that's once we have already made these activities illegal in other places, but DOR wanted it on this list to also be once again listed again along that line. And once again, sort of belt and suspenders situation. Section 7 basically gives the commissioner the power to enact basically turns over the authority of the Commissioner of Revenue to file collection actions in court to collect taxes and fees relating to bona fide coin-operated amusement machines. Section 8, I think this is important. We have two different classes of machines. The first class of machines are the kinds of machines that, quite frankly, you just go in and you play it. You don't get any kind of reward whatsoever. That's a Class A machine. And a Class B machine would be the kind of machines that you go in and you play and you get these $5 reward per single play. That's important because we have two different license charges for the different kinds of machines. Class A machines, as shown, it'll be for the licenses is basically $500, and for the class, and it goes up from there. The Class B machines found, I'm talking about line 436 now. For any number of Class B machines, the owner shall pay a master's license fee of $5,000. In addition, Mr. Chairman, and this is a very important part of the bill, we are, for the first time, not only having a license for the owner of the machine, but we're also having a license for those who wish to put the machines in their business. And then what that'll help us do, Mr. Chairman, is help regulate the use of these machines, because a lot of times these machines are perfectly legal. However, how they are used in a particular store is where the problem arises. And what this will do is, quite frankly, give the stores skin in the game by requiring them to also be licensed. You give the enforcement powers of DOR to go in and monitor their activities more closely. You also, quite frankly, can threaten them for the illegal operation they can have, not only this license pulled, but any other license they have operating in their stores pulled. The example I gave in subcommittee very briefly, when I was practicing law in Decorah, Georgia, when everything was illegal, including liquor by the drink, several establishments in town had no problem serving both alcohol and having various slot machines. But once liquor by the drink was made legal, and folks had the danger of losing their license, suddenly all those slot machines disappeared. And that's the sort of thing that we're dealing with here. By giving them skin in the game, they've got something to lose in terms of their license, for instance, to sell beer and wine, that sort of thing. So that we think is important. Section 9 of the bill, found on page 16, basically goes into the licenses once again, and in terms of how we're going to basically the administrative side in terms of obtaining the licenses. Section 10 sets up basically how you get a refund if you discontinue your operations. Once again, most of this is involved in adding or holder of a location license, adding them to the activities, and that's basically what we're doing there. In terms of Section 11, the same things. We're continuing the law through Section 11 and Section 12. We're just adding holder of the license in there as well. Section 13 is basically setting up the amount of the various fees involved. And basically, Section 14 is basically changing any provision relating to the acquisition of additional machines during the year. Section 15 deals with basically the late fee actions. Once again with DOR, I don't think anything particularly interesting there. Section yeah, basically the key thing with Section 17, Mr. Chairman, the most important aspect of that, I'm on page 22 now, deals with the 50% rule, which means that you can't operate one of these places unless more than 50% of your revenue comes from something other than these machines. Which section? Okay. This basically, this next section deals with, gives added powers to the Department of Revenue in terms of its regulatory ability to oversee this operation. We also, as found on page 24, provide for the right, both the DOR, basically what the section does is provide for regulatory authority for both DOR and the local governments so that we can have two different entities looking over them. Section 19, the only thing we deal with that is just some added language. We wanted to add relating to bona fide coin-operated amusement machines in terms of the duties of the DOR. DOR, once again, Mr. Chairman, asked for us to add a little additional language. If you look at line 872, where it says related to bona fide coin-operated amusement machines, they simply asked for us to also add, and I would ask for you to add this language, or any violations relating thereto. And that's essentially the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Whip. I know you've worked long and hard on this, and you've had some very great assistance. I've got a couple of technical questions,
Yes,
and then a
sir.
very broad question, and also a challenge for this committee. On line 61, you said you're going to remove the added in A.
Yeah.
What's the logic in removal of that?
Well,
Explain to me.
that keeps us with existing law. That should not have been added. But the A was inadvertently added by legislative council. That keeps us with existing law.
So that definition in A is not a gambling device then, is that what you're saying?
Yes. No, well, this is the exceptions, Mr. Chairman.
Any item described in subparagraph A of this paragraph shall be a prohibited gambling device. So what's described in the A, the real A, that's on line 46, is not a gambling device? Or it is? I'm confused.
Go ahead.
If in fact the game has some skill and there's limited non-cash redemption, $5 per play that Representative Lindsay had talked about, then it falls into the exception of 161235 that's in the bill. So what we're saying is all of the items in B, C, and D, no matter what you can do with that, they're always illegal gambling devices. There would be no way anybody could have a slot machine, a matchup, or a card game and be able to give a limited non-cash prize. That would always be prohibited. But something like a Pac-Man game or a pinball game or whatever, where somebody could achieve a certain score, they could get limited non-cash redemption.
Yeah, that's the whole point is that we have a limited exception. Thank you, Les. We have a limited exception within the bill for these $5 cash prizes sort of situations. Thank you.
Yeah. Please.
I don't have a problem with that, Mr. Chairman. We worked on this with different. In the end, we decided to leave everything the same, and that's. But I don't have. We had put some additional belt suspender language in. It was determined in the end it wasn't necessary, and so we took it out. The only thing that's necessary is number 5, because that's the only new language. You're right.
While we're going through questions, Mr. Sawyer, could you be crafting up whatever the amendment would be exactly? Okay. Thank you, sir. Page 3.
Yes, sir.
I know you don't want to have to just have the district attorney watch them be destroyed, but if you take out that language, it leaves the sheriff, him or herself, having to do it. Wouldn't you rather have the sheriff destroy or cause to be destroyed? I mean, the actual sheriff may not want to go out and beat these things to death, just in the interest of.
Well, the sheriff's
succinct.
office didn't come to us, but the DA's did. So. But I'm happy to take that out. I would.
No, you can leave it in. I would just suggest destroy and then add in there or cause to be destroyed. I mean, it would be under the sheriff's direction.
Yes, sir. That's fine. Which is the sheriff shall or cause or.
And again, just reviewing.
The sheriff's representative.
Or just the sheriff. I just want it to be under the sheriff's direction. And he could cause to be destroyed. He can designate anybody he wants.
I think that's
or
good.
she.
That's a good improvement, Mr. Chairman.
Line 205. I thought I understood you say the DOR had asked us to add the word successful. Is that between each and on line 205? Did I hear that correctly?
Between each and every single successful, between single and play, they wanted the word successful.
Between the word single and play, then that will be an amendment you'll propose? Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. My general question for you, as a learned attorney and elected public servant and a man, in my opinion, of unconditional integrity, is, and this is a very serious question, do you feel like that there's anything in this bill that expands gambling, unlawful gambling in the state of Georgia, either intentionally or maybe unintentionally. And before you answer that, I also want every member of this committee, if you feel like that you've seen anything in this bill, or you have any inclination by what you've seen presented here or you've read here, that this is an expansion of illegal gambling or could ever be construed as that by the general public that we represent, I would ask you to be heard now or forever hold your peace. I want that debated, and I want that debated in detail at this meeting before we vote on this bill, if anybody truly feels that way.
Okay.
That's my last question for you, Mr. Lindsay, if you'd like to answer it now, and then I challenge this committee to speak or forever hold your peace on that issue.
My answer is no, but I say that with great respect to the committee process, because that's what we've worked very hard not to allow. That's why we've worked very hard to bring in the Department of Revenue into this discussion, as well as the store owners, as well as the owners of these machines, as well as the GBI, which we've met with, and that's why we've gone as slowly as we have through the committee process. I believe the chairman will recall we've had one committee hearing last year on this issue, and we chose to sit on it for a year while we got input from different groups. We then went through additional hearings this year and took our time going through it for just that purpose. I think what this bill does is provide additional oversight of what's taking place out there through its license requirements, and provides greater clarity in terms of what is illegal activities, so that there is a clear understanding by both local officials and the Department of Revenue in terms of what they can do. It helps make it easier in terms of the destruction of machines that are operating illegally. So I think in many different ways it will help deter the kind of illegal gambling activities we have seen around the country, and we don't want to have here in this state. With that in mind, I have enormous respect for the committee process, and if somebody else could come up with an additional belt to put on these suspenders, I'm happy to hear it.
Oh, Chair, will the gentleman yield us
Yes.
further questions? Chair recognizes Chairman May.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking for clarification. What does, and you may not have it, but Joe, you might, what does Section 48-17-1 say with regard, how does it define an amusement machine?
What page in
This
the
is
number?
in relation to page 4, line 127 through line 130.
I think you have the code section pretty well laid out at line 292.
Did everybody hear that response? I didn't. What'd you say?
If you look at line 292, I think we have the code section laid out. Yeah, as to what constitutes a bona fide coin-operated amusement machine is found there.
Okay, and is amusement game defined anywhere?
Well, that's the whole term is defined. Bona fide coin-operated amusement machine is the whole thing is defined.
In that case, should this say any amusement machine rather than game? If the only reason I ask, if game is not defined, would that include my son's DS? I mean, or any other game? I don't want to. If amusement machine is defined, I would prefer if we used amusement machine here rather than amusement game, just to avoid any potential unintended consequences with regard. And it may not make a difference. I didn't see that.
Keep in mind, machine. If you look a little bit closely down at 299 through 301, we're talking about machine is basically sticking quarters into it. Your son's thing at home, I assume you haven't put something in there to.
Well, he has a little pinball machine too. I just want to make sure that we have that we're using what we have defined rather than something that is undefined. And
I see. Yeah, I believe we have, and you might want to look down. Pinball balls actually included.
Do you feel like your question's been answered or not?
yeah, I may ask another question. I don't want to read to make sure I have an understanding of, make sure I'm not wrong. But that's all for now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we'll come back to you if you want to. Chairman Houston?
Thank you. I had a couple of questions about the licensing fees.
Yes.
I see that it's going to be $25 for each Class A machine
Yes.
and $125 for each B.
Yeah.
What about your master, I think you call it your master license fee? How much is it to renew your master license fee? I didn't see that, or maybe I just overlooked it.
If you look at lines 430, page 13, you'll see how it's broken out.
I mean, down on line 44, 449, 451, it says
Those are for the owners of the business.
But
the machines themselves are up above that. For instance, Class B, for any number of Class B machines, the owner shall pay a master license fee of $5,000.
I think she wants to know, is that a one-time fee, or is that annually renewed, or what?
Annual.
Where does it say it's annual? Is that right? Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah. Hold on.
Says-
I'll show you. Let's see. 419. Thank you. Annual master license fee.
Okay.
419. Okay. The next question,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just sort of curious. How much revenue do you get from one machine? The average revenue that you could make? What's the
Depends on
profit margin?
Depends on the amount of traffic through the store. Do you?
When we set up fees on these initially for the Class A machines.
If you put the speak there.
When the master license and sticker system was first put into place, the Revenue Department had told the industry that there was about $500,000 a year in sales tax generated from the amusement machines. We created the license structure we did, and at that time there was no non-cash redemption, and it produced $1.2 million of master license and sticker fees, so it doubled. What we're talking about here is all the master licenses and all the stickers for Class A and Class B, plus the owner's portion of their fee, would produce between $15 to $20 million. And when we worked out the math within the industry, it came out that if there was sales tax, it would come out less than that.
Okay.
So that's how we came up with the fees.
And these machines are usually located in convenience stores?
Yeah. A lot of times. Right. I mean, they're located in all kinds of different stores, but the convenience stores is something often.
Restaurants, bars, Six Flags.
Well, I just on one machine, like in a convenience store, you don't know how much you'd.
Off the top of my head.
They really have not done.
Yeah, I might buy me one.
Oh, okay.
I might go in the business.
You better have
Well,
the.
I will say this, however, this is it was a different kind of machine, but these machines help get me through college long.
Okay.
Sure we want to know.
Yeah.
And it was the hardest way to make a living was working for your dad. I'll tell you.
They're all right with the college part. It's the rest of that. Chairman Stevens.
Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Whip, for the bill. I think that if we'd had this bill in effect just a few weeks ago, the scenario down in Toombs County would not have been as severe because the owners of the business has skin in the game. I think it'll decrease, quite honestly, the gambling potential in the state and doesn't increase it at all. Did you say the total amount of the revenue was going to be generated by to the state?
Yeah, the estimation we've had from the industry is we could generate somewhere between, with these kind of the licensing process and the increased fees, we have increased the fees in here as well, around 20 to 30 million is the estimation.
Okay.
Representative Teague. No, Teague. Representative Teague. I'm sorry, I didn't enunciate very well. I'm trying to keep these things in order, and she was before you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Will this help the police when they go to places? So I call it gambling, and I call it illegal gambling. Now, Now, so I'm not an attorney. I just see it. And I know that they're not doing right by the law. So will this clear up the mess that I see from county to county?
I believe it will, and that's a chief concern of mine in terms of drafting the legislation. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. With the industry giving you those figures, what did the revenue department say? Do they have any estimate?
We haven't gotten a separate estimate from the revenue department, but they haven't contradicted us on our figure. But I will say this, but I have not gotten a specific figure from them.
They're probably scared. But
I've not found DOR to be afraid of me.
I'm sorry. It's just at the end of the day. Oh, I'm so sorry. At the end of the day, at this time of the day, I don't know. I thought we were waiting on this to come in ready. So I didn't keep up with what you said, all the changes and whatnot.
Yeah.
I've been waiting on you to bring this.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm gonna have to vote no until I see this stuff typed up with those changes because they didn't tell me you were going to bring all this.
Well, I must admit we were working very hard on it, Representative, and I can appreciate your concerns. That's why I tried to go through it slowly. And I'll be
It
happy
wasn't
to.
slow enough. I'm tired.
Well, I understand. Hopefully we'll be able to walk back through the changes. I think they are relatively minor ones, but we, in the interest of time as we approach day 30, we have done double and triple time, and I hope you'll understand.
Okay, but we'll have it on it when we get ready to vote in the House. We're going to have what you talked about, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Chairman Knight.
Mr. Chairman, this is a follow-up to I guess your comment and question, and I know the representative and Ms. Snyder has worked very hard on this, but I know you also have worked with GBI and department, and I didn't know very quickly if any member from the department or from GBI could also get up and talk as to this bill and as it seeks to contract gambling or the illegal part of gambling, that they could probably testify to that or make a comment to that.
I'll leave it to my friends with DOR if they wish to or not. They have worked very hard with me.
And GBI?
Yeah, you will? Yeah, please.
Mr. Chairman, if that would.
I'm Sherry Lang. I'm an inspector with the Georgia Drug Investigation. I can say that we have worked on the bill and that we are in full support of what the bill represents, and that, yes, we do feel like it will be a deterrent.
And so again, there's no way that we're expanding or inadvertently loosening the laws on these type of machines.
No, sir.
Okay.
Absolutely not. We were involved in the Toombs County operation, and obviously operations like that are one reason that we were involved.
Thank you very much for that comment.
Thank you.
We thank you for that comment, and we especially thank you for your service to this state and with the GBI, and we thank you for all that you do.
Yes, sir.
Chairman Peake.
Sure.
I'm sure this time.
Just making sure.
You're not all that fun to hear from anyway, so go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Whip, raising $20-30 million, which is great, a great thing. Tell me, where are you expecting the additional revenue from? I know the fees are going up a little bit in the master license, but is it from cracking down on those that are stealing from us now?
You established the Class A and Class B type of machines, and the different fees set up along those lines, as well as the additional license requirements for the stores. That's where it comes from.
Okay. Good. Thanks.
Thank you. It's an honor to recognize a great friend, Representative Mosby.
You didn't say chairman. Okay. I'm just at the appropriate time.
Any day now. Okay. You have a question?
No, at the appropriate time. Let's do this thing.
Okay.
I like that.
I get that. Chairman May.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would also like to say thank you to my constituent and friend with the GBI for the work that you do. In reading through this, I still have some concern about the language where it says on line 130 on page 4, any amusement game. I see under code section 48-17-1, it does define bona fide coin-operated amusement machine. And would you? Okay, sorry. And that's on line 298.
Okay.
Would you have great heartburn or accept a friendly amendment to change amusement game to?
I don't have a problem with that.
To that defined term.
No, I don't have a
just
problem
to
with that.
avoid any unintended consequences.
Yeah.
Could we hear from our counsel on that? We certainly don't want to do anything unintentionally here that changes the whole scope of the bill.
Sure.
But I would recommend everywhere it says games, make the word game singular and then add the word machines after it. For example, on line 310, video game machines. On line 315, novelty arcade game machines. If you go back up to line 47, it's implied that every one of these things is a machine. Yet when you get down to separately enumerating machines, it's inconsistent. It goes back and forth between some that say machines now and others that just say games. I think it's very unclear. I would recommend doing that on lines 310, 315, 320, 321, 326, 327, 329, 330, and 331. That same change. Everywhere the word games appears plural, change it to singular, and add the word machines after.
Mr. Witt, would you be willing to accept that as a
Yes.
in the form of a friendly amendment?
I think that's, and I appreciate the catch.
Will the gentleman be willing to offer that amendment at the proper time?
Yes.
Thank you. 28 is Representative Meadows, Chairman Meadows.
Hard question. Line 874, page 25.
Yes, sir.
I used to pay my city attorney 50 cents every time he gave me a new word, but he had to use it in a sentence.
Eleemosynary.
Thank you. Since I hadn't got a clue what that is. I just want to know what it is.
Eleemosynary.
You will note that is an existing law.
Well, I wrote that down too, but it didn't do me a bit of good.
But I tell you what, thanks a lot. That's going to be the word of the night for my children. There you go.
Thank you, Stacy.
You see, they really read these things. I'm so proud of this committee.
Well, I'm going to make my sons look it up anyway. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I will now ask if any member of the committee wishes to be heard individually, make a statement about this legislation, not a question, if anybody wants to be heard. I guess everybody's exhausted all of their will to go forward. With that being said, what is the desire of the committee? I have a motion to pass and a second. And I know we have further discussion, so I think we ought to start taking these amendments one by one. And the first one I was aware of was on page 2. Mr. Whip, would you state that?
I believe
that our
learned
attorney-
counsel wanted us to drop or strike in its entirety lines 46 through 63. Is that
Mr.
correct?
Sawyer, would you read to the committee the proposed amendment?
Yes, sir. Beginning on line 43, strike the phrase by revising paragraph 2 of and put in its place the word in.
I-N, okay.
On line 44, after definitions, comma,
Does everybody understand the amendment? Is there objection? Hearing none, the amendment's in as stated by our counsel. I'll recognize you in just a minute, Chairman Math. I'm going to try to keep it in order. I know you're going to be coming later in the thing. On page 3, line 96, the chair would propose add after the word, well, first of all, there's an amendment you want to propose about the district attorney. Would you?
I think we can all do them at the same time. Basically, I want to strike after the word same on line 96 the following phrase: in the presence of the district attorney or the circuit in which the county is located. Strike that phrase. And you wanted to also add, Mr. Chairman.
Well, if you do that, then my amendment is irrelevant. I wanted to make sure that the sheriff didn't have to personally do it, so I guess the one I was talking about would have. Mine would probably be the sheriff shall or cause within the after receiving the advice. Yeah, after the word destroy or cause to be destroyed. Yeah, I'm sorry. You're right. I'm not seeing well late in the day. After the word destroy, before the word the, I would propose or cause to be destroyed. Is there objection on that amendment? Hearing none, it's in. And then would you state yours one more time, Mr. Lindsay?
I believe, if I may, Mr. Chairman, would you like me just to read the whole sentence? Or just my, all right, my part that I want to have struck is after the word same, in the presence of the district attorney of the circuit in which such county is located. Strike that phrase.
Does everybody understand? Is there objection? Is that an objection?
No, I was just saying maybe we want to read it to make sure.
Okay. Now would you? How about reading the whole sentence through with mine and your amendment, and then we'll go forward.
How about asking our legislative council?
Beginning actually at the end of line 95, the last 3 lines of the bill would read, the sheriff shall, within 10 days after receiving the advice, destroy or cause to be destroyed the same, and shall forward to the state revenue.
Yeah, and then it picks up on the next page. Right. Okay, everybody hear the combined amendment. Is there objection? Hearing none, that amendment's in. Okay. Were there any further amendments before we got to Chairman May's amendment from you? Chair recognizes Chairman May.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to amend on line 130 after any strike amusement game and replace it with bona fide coin operated amusement machine. And then on page 5, line 144. Actually, that may be.
Let's do them one at a time. Mr. Whip,
Yes.
that 130, I hadn't heard that one before. State that again.
On line 130?
Yes, sir.
Strike amusement game and replace it with bona fide coin operated amusement machine, which is the definition is defined on line 298 in the bill.
Is there objection?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Was that an objection, Mr. Mosley? Oh, okay. Right, it's in. I saw it. If you're at an auction, you just bought it. Thank you. Yes, sir. Chairman. Chairman Parsons.
If I may ask, I just know that in some parts of the bill here, it refers to an amusement game that requires money. It's not just coin operated, but requires money or something like that. I mean, there's some other terminology. I just want to know if just using the coin operated would cause any kind of problem.
I don't believe it does.
Okay.
I think Mr. Schurer was trying to deal with that when it comes to putting after the word. Every time the word game is mentioned, we're going to include the word machine. I think we'll take care of your concern if I understand you.
Well, my only concern was I think that Representative May's amendment would change that to coin, at some place in his amendment, coin operated, and I just, in other parts of the bill, it's not just coin operated, but there's some terminology I'd have to find, but in addition to coin operated, it requires money, it requires funds or something like that. That's my only question, if that's, and I don't know that it does, I was asking if it does cause a problem.
I think it's a good question. If you don't mind, I would defer that to our counsel, Mr. Schroyer. Did you understand what he was asking?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Parsons. Good question, and we want to get it right. Continue, Chairman May.
Well, and then the subsequent changes would begin on lines 308 through 357, and then just put in the corrective language as described by counsel.
Could I ask our legal counsel again if you would restate where the machine and all that, and on each line, and everybody understand the amendment? Is there objection? All those are in. Mr. Whip, I would back up now.
Page 6.
Seems
Jim.
like we went beyond page 6, and I think you had an amendment to propose there.
On line 205, after the word single, add the word successful. So the phrase will be single successful play of the machine.
Everybody understand the amendment? Is there objection? If not, it's in.
Page 11, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sure, did you get down what I wrote?
I only got through the word device.
Okay.
I
I'll read it very slowly, Mr. Chairman. I knew Roman numeral 15 after line 359.
So what line would it be on?
Well, it would be I guess,
between lines
359 and 360.
How are we going to do that? Are we going to have to change the whole nomenclature in the bill?
No, sir. When I incorporate these changes, everything will, the line numbers will be automatically resequenced.
He's magic. Go ahead.
The phrase will, the line will now read, any video game machine or device for the play of poker, comma, blackjack, comma, any other card game, or any variation of the foregoing, semicolon. Oh, period. Period. Should be period. Blackjack, comma, any other card game or any variation of the foregoing, period. And as part of that, Mr. Chairman, you would also need to strike the word "and" at the end of line 358. And insert at the end of line 359 a semicolon "and."
I'd like to defer to our counsel there. I'm not sure what or variation of the foregoing actually means or what that modifies in the sense of this repetitive phrase. Is that going to do what we think he intends to do, Mr. Schroyer?
That's brilliant, Mr. Chairman. I go with that.
Okay, so could we read one more time the entirety of the amendment now as amended? Period. Okay. Everybody understand the amendment? Is there objection? The amendment's in.
Mr. Chairman, the next amendment I have is on line 20, page 25, line 872. Which is 2 lines before Ilya Masani, whatever it is. In all seriousness, Mr. Chairman, after the word machines, or any violations related thereto. Simply add that phrase.
Each member of the committee understand the amendment. Is there objection? That was in.
That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Further discussion, any member of the committee? Yes, sir. Chairman Parsons.
Still in discussions. I just have a question, and this is going to sound like a silly question, I'm sure. But on page 9, we were talking about these definitions down here, from 3.0 to 3.10 on through that we made. And on line 299, I'm just wondering why that the words "of any kind or character" were taken out. It seemed to me like that should have stayed in, because these are not machines. I mean, they really aren't machines. It seemed like that actually, "of any kind or character," actually extended it to machines other than mechanical type machines.
I honestly don't have a problem at all putting that word phrase back in.
I don't mind going in.
Case, I think it was taken out simply to try to reduce the number of words occasionally. But in case anyone should ever construe this as somehow opening a door that shouldn't be, let's put it "or any kind or character" back in.
Okay. I'm not being critical.
No,
I'm just wondering why.
I think it's a good point. Mr. Chairman, I would have no problem with that.
I will understand this committee understand the amendment. We will add back in the otherwise stricken on line 299 of the bill "of any kind or character." The amendment is to re-add those words. Is there objection? Hearing none, those are in.
Mr. Chairman, I think your legislative council had a.
Yes, sir.
Chairman, just one suggestion or clarification. This would be on page 21. There's a tab. We can do this two ways. Typically during the code review process, when phrasing such as the effective date of this code section is enacted as part of a statute, what we'll typically do, if it's a government effective date, is in the text of the statute actually substitute that direct date. If this phrasing is just a little bit different, the effective date of the amendment of this code section, we've never actually dealt with that phrasing before. You know, as long as I understand from the committee that what's intended to go in these three spaces on line 729, 734, and 736 is the date that the governor signs this bill. I can make sure that that's the date that actually, when this bill is printed in the code, that's the date that goes in. Otherwise, I would recommend that in front of the word amendment on lines 730, 734, and 736, we add 2010. Since I presume that these references are intended to refer to the effective date of this bill, and that it's not intended to refer to any other bills.
I think on line 899, we've got at least a tacit attempt at defining the effective date, and it's upon its approval by the governor, or it becoming law otherwise, which should, it certainly would be my thought as the chairman of the committee that it would be handled in the traditional way, that the insertion of the actual signing of the bill date, which would constitute the approval, or the running of the 40 days. Okay. Is there objection to that? Does any member of the committee object to the traditional application of the effective date for technical purposes? Representative Beasley Teague?
With this legislation, if we put the date, I don't know, grandfather in the situation that y'all just took care of, how can we do that? I mean, that you're working on. How can we do that? Is that possible?
It is. I think it is. If I understand what you mean by grandfather in, what y'all were just talking about.
I mean, you know, the situation that took place not too long ago, would that help to be able to, in that situation?
I don't believe it could. I believe you have to deal with the raid. You're talking about the raid in Toombs County?
Yeah.
I believe the raid in Toombs County is going to have to be based on whatever the law was at that time.
Okay.
We can't go back and say what you did is now illegal.
We only do that in the tax law. That's called that ex post facto thing in the Constitution. So, or at least certainly accused of that all the time. Is there any further discussion from the committee? Any further amendment? Posture of the committee, as I understand it right now, is we have a due pass motion and a second. Now due pass as amended several times, which have all been added without objection. And now would ask for a motion to waive print. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion to waive print signify by saying aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. All in favor of the due pass motion, House Bill 293 being LC 285223S, now as amended, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, like sign. Carries, and it will be in the Rules Committee. Mr. Lindsay, thank you very much.
I appreciate the tolerance of the committee. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, this is likely to be the last time this committee meets this session on House bills. We're probably going to have to meet a lot on Senate bills, but pending crossover day, I'd just like to tell you, as sincerely as I know how to say it, thank you. Your work ethic has been incredible. I appreciate your service to the state. If there's no further business, oh, I do, Representative Abrams.
Thank you, sir, and I appreciate the sentiments. My question would be, given the meeting that we had in sales tax earlier today with the critical issue facing Clayton County, and given that many of them may be watching, I am concerned about the inference that we are not going to be able to address that situation this year.
Absolutely didn't mean that. I completely lost mind to that. So maybe it's not likely the last time we will meet.
I apologize to all for making the meeting come back, but
thank you for bringing that up. That was not my intent to foreclose that issue at all. It was not. Ladies and gentlemen, we stand adjourned.